You're listening to Puma Podcast.
Hi, you're listening to Teka Teka News. The Holy Week break is a good time for reflection and rejuvenation, with a cup of coffee as a companion. In this episode, we're sharing a story from another Puma Podcast show, What's Up? Araling Panlipunan Rebooted. It revisits the history of coffee in the Philippines and unpacks what role consumers have in this thriving industry.
There is a magic potion that when you brew it, releases an incredible aroma.
It makes you sociable in the morning, gives you energy, and historically, it's a chosen drink of scholars and activists. And the beans used to make this potion are grown right here in the Philippines.
That's right. Today, we're talking about coffee. Coffee has been a part of Philippine life since the 1700s, and the Philippines is part of the Bean Belt, aka that part of the world between certain latitudes that are the only parts of the world where coffee can be grown, which makes us part of an exclusive club.
But while most of us first learn about coffee through 3-in-1 sachets at the Sari Sari store, college vending machines, or as the partner to drive-through breakfasts, there's so much more to discover about its history, the art of specialty coffee in the present day, and the future of where our industry is headed.
So tune in. It's time to wake up and smell the coffee. Welcome to What's Up? Araling Panlipunan Rebooted, the podcast that looks at Philippine history with fresh eyes.
I'm Siege Tantenko, reporter, history nerd, and while I enjoy specialty coffee shops,
And I'm Sab Schnabel, a historian and a comedian who has worked for Carlos Celdran, the National Museum of the Philippines, and the Guggenheim in Venice.
everyone's welcome here. Whether you take your coffee black, or with loads of cream and syrup, or somewhere in between.
It's definitely much yummier when paired with a hefty serving of history.
Actually, funny thing with the culture of coffee drinking sa mga Pinoy is, yun nga, kumakain tayong silog sa morning. Mahilig magkape ang Pinoy ng with salty food kasi na-enhance ng salty food yung experience natin with coffee. So, hi, I'm Aaron Llavore. So, I'm the owner and green sourcer for Trails and Traces Coffee Roasters. And I'm also 4 years now in the coffee industry and 6 years in total in the food industry. I source directly from the farms, curate their farms, and up until it gets to the cow. So, and I'm also a licensed Q processor, level 1, governed by the Coffee Quality Institute of Colombia.
Being a licensed Q processor means Aaron is familiar with the language and science of coffee processing and how it affects flavor, which is why he can also act like a sommelier but for coffee. And on top of that, he's also brimming with knowledge on the history of coffee in the Philippines.
So, how coffee started or got here in the Philippines in the first place is through the Galleon Trade in the Spanish era from the US. But it all came from Mexico through the trading of the Spaniards to the Americans. And it got to the Philippines through Batangas port. So, that's why Batangas is the famous site for coffee.
There's a clue in our Filipino word for coffee as to where it came from. Cape, coming from the Spanish café, indicates that the Spanish brought coffee to the Philippines. So coffee was brought to our shores and took to our soil like a duck to water. Remember when we told you about the Bean Belt? Here's the exact location.
So it's already 25 degrees north from the equator and 35 degrees south of the equator.
The Philippines is squarely in the bean belt, and on our soil, you'll find the 4 main types of coffee: Arabica, Robusta, Excelsa, and Liberica. If you've ever wondered what makes them all unique from one another, here's someone to help Aaron break it down.
Hi, I'm Bryan, Garrido. I'm the owner of Connector Coffee. I've been in the coffee industry for 4 years almost. I started out as an enthusiast, but it led me to have a business out of it. Now I get to teach people as well. So sa Arabica is like relative to the other 3, no? Higher acidity, more tea-like, way, mas complex, so you get a lot of more exciting flavors. yung body is thinner, so like yung mouthfeel medyo mas thin. So yun sa Arabica. Sa Robusta naman,
usually it's very generic in taste. So yung Robusta coffee mo is yung ginagamit for instant coffee, nutty, chocolate. So next naman, Iberica. Very pungent, fermenty yung mga coffees namin. So mga overripe fruits, jackfruit notes, mga intense notes siya. Kaya rin na siya na sabihan na Barako. Kasi very pungent siya in terms of taste. Then, lastly, yung Excelsa. Actually, heavily debated yung Excelsa kasi if it's a variety on its own or a sub-varietal of Libel. Kasi almost similar sila, pero sweeter lang ng onti si Excelsa. So, ang Excelsa is around 0.5, 0.4% ng world production. Sobrang liit.
According to the Philippine Coffee Board, we're one of the few countries that can grow these four main types. So for a while, we were growing coffee for export. Lipa, Batangas was especially known for its coffee.
The Philippines even had a huge coffee boom. In the late 1800s, a blight swept across the coffee-growing world that shriveled up plants and attacked cherries. It was caused by the fungus Hemilea vastatrix that started to ransack the coffee crops throughout the Americas and Asia.
Nagkaroon ng coffee rust. So, majority of the growers at the time, 1850s to 1900s, is the Brazilian coffees, Latin American countries. So, nung natamaan sila ng coffee rust, basically, back to zero sila lahat. And we're the last country na tamaan nito.
From the late 1880s to the early 1890s, we were safe from the coffee rust. So, what happened? Why aren't we the major coffee producers today?
After a few golden years during which importers and traders got their coffee from other regions outside Latin America, basically us, the coffee rust came for us too.
In 1900s to 1920s, naka-regenerate na ulit yung mga Latin American countries. May nakagawa na sila ng mas resistant strain ng Arabica na nakakombat against coffee rust. Bumalik lahat ng mga traders to the original coffee growing countries. We resorted back to coconut. So, kaya lahat ng mga coffee trees pinagpuputol, then pumasok ang coconut. So, kaya ngayon, sobrang dami nating coconut.
We've never regained that spot as one of the top exporters.
But even if the first golden age is over, maybe we can have another one. What would a new golden age look like?
Maybe it's not about quantity, as in the volume of how much we export, but rather the quality. How good can we get our coffee to be?
Pre-pandemic, 70% of your coffee consumers here in the Philippines either consume instant coffee or commercial-based, so basically your Starbucks, Yatas Best, up until mga ready-to-drink coffees. And yung 30% is basically your household consumers, mga beans, mga ground coffee, and yung mga specialty coffee drinkers and home brewers.
Specialty coffee is gourmet coffee of the highest caliber. On a scale of 1 to 100, 100 being the best coffee possible, specialty coffee scores an 80 or higher. There is a governing body called the Specialty Coffee Association that grades coffees and slaps that label of specialty coffee on the bag.
During the pandemic, bilang na-stock na lahat ng mga tao sa bahay, sobrang napansin namin yung growth ng home brewers. Nakita namin yung growth in terms of sales ng whole beans and grounded coffee na parang na-realize na parang sobra na to than usual.
Maybe an example would be the beans I offer now in Connector. I wouldn't be offering that way back pre-pandemic. Those prices, I wouldn't be able to sell that. But now, I could sell them easily because people appreciate it.
See, the pandemic wasn't all just Dalgona coffee. Without access to their usual coffee shops, many Filipinos decided to pick up brewing coffee as a hobby and fell down the rabbit hole of new insights and debunked misconceptions.
So for the espresso, may pre-notion kasi siya sa atin na parang espresso is very harsh, very intense. But here, yung espresso, kaya nyo siyang ma-enjoy as is.
Papunta pa lang tayo sa exciting part, the tasting. Stay tuned. Have you ever had a cup of coffee that changed your life?
Every single morning.
No, I mean fundamentally changed how you look at coffee. This is what Aaron and Bryan call the wow cup.
Well, may kanya-kanya definition ng wow cup. Pero yung wow cup for me is the time na nag-translate ka from commercial coffee or casual coffee to specialty coffee. Parang hindi ka nababalik na sa instant coffee. Well,
Bryan's wow cup led him to starting his own business, Connector Coffee.
So my wow cup started from a roaster in Cebu. The origin is from Buji, Ethiopia. It's from Mormora Estate. Mormora Estate is the farm. Good friend Gio, Presentation of Good Cup, brought it here. They roasted it way back 2018, and then I bought a kilo. I didn't know that it was gonna be my wow cup. I just bought a kilo. Got it shipped here from Cebu. Brought it. Smelled the bag. It smelled like red gummy bears. The smell was red gummy bears, and then I brewed it. I wasn't too good at brewing at that time. I tasted peaches, like 3 peaches, black tea. Yeah, it was just exploding in my mind. And I finished the whole kilo in probably like, less than a month. And then after that, I just fell in love with everything.
And when Aaron discovered his Wow Cup in 2018, he was working as a corporate food scientist.
Yung wow cup ko actually when I was research and developing for my corporate work about coffee. Like, talagang ni-reverse engineer ko yung buong supply chain ng coffee. I tasted a lot of espressos, I tasted a lot of coffees, very intense, very chocolatey. But may isang coffee shop na pinuntahan, sarado na sila ngayon. They said na, itong latte ito maglalasa ng blueberry cheesecake. Blueberry cheesecake. So, talagang tinignan ko siya from start to finish. Ano siya nilagay na syrup. Pero once na nag-sip ako din ko, alala ko pa rin siya. Parang, shoot, blueberry cheesecake. So, yun yung pinaka-wow cup ko na sabi ko. Pwede pa na maglasa ng ganito yung coffee. So,
How can a coffee taste like cheesecake, you may ask?
Like Aaron and Bryan said, tasting is believing. So we started out a long, yummy tasting session with 2 cups, the same beans from the same batch of roasting, but prepared in 2 ways. So the notes we're looking for in the espresso are berry notes and chocolate notes. But for the cortado, we're looking for cheesecake notes! Ah! The beans are a blend of coffee sourced from 3 different regions.
for the espresso, kaya din nilagay namin yung 3 origins. May rolls sila. So, the Brazil is the base. So, usually yung notes ng Brazil is chocolatey, nutty, brown sugar. Then, yung Mexico is more of a glue guy dyan sa tatlo na siya yung sweetness, siya yung smoothness and syrupy na body. Then, yung Ethiopia, nandun yung mga berry notes naman. So,
oh, it's yum. Hey, Mama.
Oh, that's really good. I wish I had a more sophisticated palate so I could be like, I taste the berries.
Galing. It's parang if you grew up drinking yung instant or something. I think that's where we get the conception na pag hindi mo siya hinaluan, mapait lang siya.
Yeah,
tapos
coffee
siya.
is bitter.
Oo. Tapos
Coffee is tapang.
Di ba?
I want to try the cheesecake now.
Okay. You first.
Okay, cheesecake. Yeah, it's the foaminess and the creaminess. Yeah, it's really milky.
I get the cheesecakiness. Like if you eat yung Basque burnt cheesecake,
It's something like
it's
that.
very
Yeah.
Basque burnt cheesecake.
Yeah. Straight out the gate, we were shook by the complex flavor profiles that coffee can have.
Coffee is both a science and an art. Every change matters. This is when the duo bust out a thick hardcover book titled The Physics of Filter Coffee, written by astrophysicist Jonathan Gagne.
So basically, sobrang in-depth niya na science analysis ng physics of coffee talaga. Na how water interacts, how important the flow rate, how important the material of the coffee filter up until makarating yung temperature ng vessel. So,
Also the size of the particles, what kind of steel you're using for your grinder, why you shouldn't be using like ceramic burrs for grinding, you should be using steel, ganyan, how high you pour your kettle. It makes a difference. Half a centimeter makes a difference in how much you extract your coffee.
We're far past the days of the sludgy, reheated coffee that George Washington was so fond of. Now there's many ways we can have amazing fresh coffee, and there's a lot of opportunity for the Philippine coffee industry. We are capable of producing the world's best coffee.
So ito yung isa sa mga price lots dito sa Philippines, which is yung Mount Apo, Maritas Arellano. So, i-expect nyo dyan bananas, jasmine, cacao nibs.
Mount Apo in Mindanao is the origin, And Marites Arellano is the farmer. She was the winner of the 2021 Philippine Coffee Quality Competition.
Oh my gosh, gets ko yung banana!
Oh my god, I totally smell the banana in this.
And you would expect na very sweet siya. Pero wala akong nilagay na kahit anong sugar.
Marites Arellano attributes the quality of her coffee to good agricultural practices, which she learned from the Philippine Coffee Advancement and Farm Enterprise Program, or PhilCafe.
The coffee industry's program should be developed and promoted further, especially since we're already at an advantage. Our coffee can actually weather the effects of climate change.
Liberica is the key. Globally, I think, yun yung parang blessing in disguise sa atin na marami tayong Liberica. So, when that time comes, hopefully not soon, na talagang ma-feel natin yung climate change, medyo masasalba pa tayo ng Liberica natin. Because we can now grow Liberica in the upper regions naman. The Liberica naman thrives in any
Actually, yung
altitude.
isa sa mga natikman kong high elevation Liberica from Calzada nun, natikman mo yun. Sobrang nagulat kami na kaya niya maglasa na ganun. Para siyang maraschino cherries yung lasa nito. So, maraschino cherries and bananas.
But having potential and maximizing it are two different things. Our coffee industry faces many challenges, from farmers not getting paid what they deserve to consumers not wanting to pay the price it takes to fuel the industry.
So, what can we do? Let's start with agriculture. In other countries, farmers receive government support to grow different varietals and increase crop quality and diversity. If you recall our chocolate episode, it's a similar thought. With excellent products, we can position ourselves as makers of fine coffee, price our products at a premium, and thus strengthen the industry.
Isang sub-varietal din ng Liberica. Finerment ko siya and naglasa siyang parang rum, banana, and jackfruit. Na very clean and very sweet nung time ngayon na parang actually I sold that coffee ng 500 pesos for 100 grams and it sold out within 30 minutes.
Yeah.
The government also needs to fully implement the Sagip-Saka Act, signed in 2019 and authored by Senator Kiko Pangilinan.
Sobrang in-emphasize niya doon yung farm-to-market roads, which is na-experience ko first-hand doon pumunta akong Kibungan, which is 4 hours away sa Baguio. And I've met a lot of farmers there na parang, oh, gano'ng kadami pa yung yield nyo. So, may farm raw na kamakos, 30 kilos lang. So, parang, if you think about it, 30 kilos, ibabiyahe ko going sa Baguio City para ibenta, then babalik pa ako papuntang Kibungan. So, that's already 8 hours of traveling na magbebenta ka na ng 30 kilos ng coffee. Is it profitable?
The Sagip-Saka Act also requires local government units and different government agencies to buy directly from farmers and fisherfolk cooperatives, therefore avoiding the middlemen and protecting our farmers from unfair pricing. If the current officials would implement it fully, it would make a huge difference in the lives of farmers.
As a processor, Aaron does his part by sharing his knowledge with farmers, showing them how valuable their product actually is.
Actually, majority of our farmers doesn't know how much their coffee is. They also don't know what their coffee tastes like. So every time na pumunta ako sa mga farms, ako mismo nagtitimpla ng coffee. May maliit akong roasting machine, dinadala ko doon. Then roast ko yung coffee nila and sabi ko, yan yung coffee. Period. So, nagkakaroon sila ngayon ng idea na kaya pala yung coffee ko maging ganito. So, doon na sila namumulat ang important ko pala sa step ng supply chain.
There's a lot more that can be done when the government really puts in the work to develop the market and our agriculture. That's how some of our Asian neighbors are thriving.
Another possible solution for that is for the government to invest in formal education and training, plus newer technology, to help our farmers improve their yield.
All this will keep our farmers committed to growing coffee instead of cutting them down for cash crops, or younger generations leaving the industry for greener pastures.
But more profitable crops aren't the only things coffee trees are up against, but real estate and commercial development too. So, as you can see, this is a problem that cuts across multiple sectors and involves government agencies at different levels.
These are problems that have been highlighted in a study called The Philippines in the Coffee Global Value Chain, which was carried out by Duke University in partnership with USAID and the DTI.
And there's the 2017 to 2022 Philippine Coffee Industry Roadmap by the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Trade and Industry. But the Agriculture Department updated the roadmap in 2021, and by the looks of it, many of the problems we just talked about still remain.
You might be wondering what we the consumers can do to help. For starters, we can learn more about the coffee we're drinking. A cup of specialty coffee is about the same price as a large milk tea. So if we can spend that amount on milk tea, why not also on coffee that's proudly grown from our soil and roasted and brewed by Filipinos passionate about the craft?
Consumers like you and me play a part in the future of the coffee industry. When you understand how much work our farmers, roasters, and brewers put into each cup, you understand why it's not sustainable to expect coffee to cost next to nothing. We have the power to create more demand for quality products and elevate the value of our farmers' produce.
Bryan and Aaron also suggest looking for responsibly sourced coffee.
Basically, rule of thumb, more information on the bag is better. Varietal, sub-region, medyo nakakagulat na some other roasters don't put this. Or like yung mga commercial, yung roast day.
So let's break it down. First, find out if the coffee is Arabica, Robusta, Excelsa, or Liberica.
Second, where did the coffee come from? The more specific, the better. If it's from Benguet, which municipality of Benguet did it come from? And if the bag tells you the exact farm and farmer, like what Bryan does with the bag's connector coffee cells, that's definitely premium stuff.
And lastly, you want to know when it was roasted. Bryan says that it's a common misconception that just roasted beans are the best. They need to rest first and release the gases. Coffee is at its tastiest between 10 days to 1.5 months after roasting. And as a consumer, it's your right to ask for all of this info.
Brew yourself some beans from Connector Coffee or Trails and Traces Coffee. Support small businesses that work directly with farmers.
So, if any of you want to learn more, coffee lovers or not, newbies, intermediate people, advanced, you're all welcome to come inside Katha Lifestyle Store and Cafe in Cubao Expo. And if you want to learn more about coffee na very seriously, we're now starting to offer actually face-to-face classes. Message us on our social media platforms. For me, it's on Instagram mainly at Connector Coffee.
And for me, Trails and Traces PH.
Before we wrap up, here's Cuento Corner, where we share a random little bite-sized story from history you might want to know.
Have you been to Lipa, Batangas? If you have, you might notice some gorgeous old bahay na bato tucked between modern structures.
These are the last remnants of the time when Lipa was a boom town. Like we said earlier in the episode, early in our coffee production history, it was the center of coffee and it gave rise to the Lipa millionaires.
You might have even heard of some of them. Segunda Katigbak, famous love of Jose Rizal, came from a family that had coffee to thank for their fortunes. Teodoro M. Calao, the famous writer and historian, hailed from Lipa, and he wrote about his childhood home's time of prosperity like this.
Those were the days of prosperity for Lipa. People everywhere talked of its very rich aristocracy, its handsome carriages drawn by huge horses, the señoritos dressed in the style of the day in shirts spangled with sequins that glittered in the sun. Money was splurged on clothes, interior decor and pictures, on rare crystals and china ordered from Europe, on curtains of finest silk, on slender black chairs from Vienna, on exquisite table wines and foods. Lipa society sought to equal the halls and banquets of Madrid. We often hear about Filipinos under colonial rule as downtrodden and impoverished. But there were also Filipino millionaires, and they had coffee to thank for their fortunes.
We have an opportunity now to repeat something good that happened in our history. We have a chance to do it again, and do it better this time.
So the next time you drink coffee, don't just gulp it down. Think of the rich history in every cup.
I don't know about you, but that makes every cup taste that much better.
And that was today's episode of Teka Teka News. I'm Ed Faraon. This episode was hosted by Siege Tantenko and Sab Schnabel. This episode was produced for WhatsApp, Araling Panlipunan Rebooted, by Nina Toralba and edited by Joe Salcedo. Our Teka Teka News executive producer is Jill Caro, and our senior news editor is Veronica Uy. If you liked this episode or got you craving for another cup of coffee, share a cup and this episode with a friend. Thanks for listening.